The year was 1986, and the world's gaze fixed upon Mexico, a vibrant canvas for the most anticipated football spectacle on Earth, the FIFA World Cup. A palpable electricity hummed through the sun-drenched stadiums and across continents, a universal language spoken through the rhythmic thud of a ball and the roar of a crowd. Nations gathered, not just to compete, but to celebrate, to dream, to witness history unfold. Yet, beneath the shimmering veneer of sporting camaraderie, a profound tension simmered, particularly between two nations whose recent past was steeped in far more than friendly rivalry. Just 4 years prior, a brutal, bloody conflict had erupted thousands of miles away in the South Atlantic. The Falklands War, known as the Malvinas War in Argentina, had pitted the United Kingdom against Argentina in a short, sharp, and devastating struggle over a remote archipelago. The echoes of that conflict, though fading from the daily headlines, resonated deeply within the hearts of millions. For the British, it was a defense of sovereign territory, a swift and decisive victory. For Argentina, however, it was a profound national trauma, a wound inflicted upon their collective soul, a perceived humiliation that festered with a bitter sense of injustice and loss. The war had claimed lives, shattered families, and left an indelible scar on the national psyche, fueling a fierce, almost primal sense of wounded pride. Into this emotionally charged global arena stepped the Argentinian national football team, a squad brimming with talent, but burdened by the immeasurable weight of their nation's unaddressed grief and anger. Leading them was a young man, barely 25, whose name was already synonymous with footballing genius, Diego Maradona. Born into poverty in the shantytowns of Lanús, he had risen like a phoenix, his feet weaving magic on the pitch, his spirit reflecting the fiery passion of his people. Maradona was not merely a player. He was a symbol, a beacon of hope for a country still reeling from its recent past, a nation desperate for something, anything, to reclaim its dignity and pride. His every touch, every dribble, every shot carried the unspoken prayers of millions. The political and social tensions, though officially separate from the sporting event, were undeniably present, a dark undercurrent beneath the joyous spectacle. Every match Argentina played was watched with an intensity that transcended sport. It was a quest for validation, a silent scream for recognition. The English team, formidable and disciplined, arrived in Mexico as strong contenders, their focus squarely on the football, perhaps largely unaware of the profound depth of sentiment that their Argentinian counterparts carried. To them, it was a game. To Argentina, it was a chance at something akin to redemption. Then came the quarter-final draw, a moment that sent shockwaves through the tournament and the world. Argentina versus England. The sheer improbability of it, the cruel hand of fate, or, perhaps, a destined confrontation. It was not just a football match, it was a symbolic rematch, a collision of histories, a rekindling of old wounds on a new battlefield. The media, both in Argentina and England, immediately seized upon the narrative, framing the game with headlines that screamed of revenge, honor, and national pride. This was more than a quarter-final. It was a proxy war, played out not with bullets and bombs, but with boots and a ball. The weight of a nation's sorrow and anger settled heavily upon the shoulders of the Argentinian players, particularly Maradona. They understood the unspoken mandate. This was their chance to fight back, to deliver a blow, however symbolic, against the architects of their recent pain. The English players, for their part, felt the rising pressure of a World Cup quarter-final, but likely lacked the same visceral historical connection to the opponent. For Argentina, every pass, every tackle, every shot, would be infused with the raw emotion of a people who had suffered, a people who longed for a moment of triumph to wash away the bitter taste of defeat. The air thickened with a sense of impending destiny, an unavoidable confrontation that transcended the boundaries of sport. The world held its breath, wondering, how would the trauma of war manifest itself on the football pitch? Could a game truly offer solace, or would it merely deepen the existing chasm between these two proud nations? The stage was set for an encounter that would forever be etched in the annals of history, a match where the stakes felt higher than merely progression to the semi-finals. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The weight of a nation often proves crushing, yet for Diego Maradona, it seemed to fuel an unparalleled fire. His story was one of stark contrasts, a trajectory launched from the dusty, impoverished streets of Villa Fiorito, a shantytown on the outskirts of Buenos Aires, to the dazzling, manicured pitches of international football. From a tender age, his feet, almost preternaturally gifted, danced with a ball as if it were an extension of his very being. His family, struggling against the harsh realities of poverty, saw in him not just a son, but a shimmering, almost miraculous hope. This humble beginning instilled in Maradona a fierce resilience, a defiant spirit that would come to define his career and, crucially, his role in this pivotal World Cup. He was not merely a football player, he was the Pibe de Oro, the Golden Boy, a living embodiment of the Argentinian dream. Every intricate dribble, every audacious pass, every thunderous shot was imbued with the collective hopes and dreams of a people who had endured so much. The pressure on his young shoulders was immense, yet he embraced it, seemingly thriving under the intense scrutiny. His success was their success, his triumphs a balm for their wounds. This connection deepened profoundly after the Falklands War. Though he had not fought on the front lines, Maradona became a symbolic standard-bearer for a nation still grappling with the psychological scars of defeat and humiliation. He understood, perhaps more acutely than anyone, that this World Cup, and particularly this match against England, was far more than just a game. It was a chance for a different kind of battle, a symbolic reclamation of pride, a moment for Argentina to stand tall again. The English team, a formidable opponent in their own right, arrived in Mexico with a quiet confidence. They possessed a squad of skilled professionals, tactically astute and physically robust. Their manager, a seasoned strategist, had meticulously prepared them for the challenges of the tournament. Yet, for all their preparation and talent, there was a fundamental disconnect. They saw Argentina as another highly capable footballing nation, a rival to be respected and overcome on the pitch. What they likely failed to fully grasp was the profound, almost existential depth of sentiment that their Argentinian counterparts carried into the match. For England, the Falklands War was a chapter closed, a victory secured. For Argentina, the Malvinas remained an open wound, a constant ache, and this game offered an unexpected, potent opportunity for catharsis. The English players were focused on football. The Argentinians were focused on history, on redemption, on a unique form of justice. In the days leading up to the quarter-final, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Training sessions for both teams were intense, each player pushing their limits, honed bodies moving with precision and purpose. For Argentina, every drill, every sprint, every tactical discussion was underscored by an unspoken understanding of the match's true significance. Maradona, in particular, moved with a focused intensity, his eyes burning with a quiet determination. He was not just preparing for a game, he was preparing for a reckoning. His teammates, a band of brothers united by shared experience and national pride, looked to him, their captain, their leader, knowing that much rested on his individual brilliance. The media narrative, already feverish, reached a crescendo. Newspapers in Buenos Aires carried headlines that spoke of vengeance and honor, framing the match as a chance to restore national dignity. English tabloids, while perhaps less overtly aggressive, nevertheless highlighted the historical context, acknowledging the symbolic weight of the encounter. The world's press descended upon Mexico City, sensing that this was not merely a sporting event, but a cultural phenomenon, a moment where geopolitics and sport would collide in spectacular fashion. Every interview, every soundbite, every fleeting glimpse of the players was dissected, analyzed, and amplified, feeding the burgeoning tension. The individual stories of sacrifice and determination within both squads were compelling. For England, players had dedicated years, often a lifetime, to reach this pinnacle, enduring rigorous training, personal setbacks, and immense pressure. They represented the best of English football, their pride invested in their performance. Yet, for Argentina, the stakes felt immeasurably higher. Their sacrifices were not just personal, they were communal. They carried the burden of a nation's collective sorrow, the memory of fallen soldiers, the pain of a perceived injustice. Their determination was steeped in a desire to provide solace, to offer a moment of pure, unadulterated joy to a people who desperately needed it. The psychological warfare began subtly, long before the referee's whistle. The Argentinian players, fueled by their deep-seated emotions, walked with a purposeful intensity, their eyes reflecting the gravity of their mission. The English, perhaps sensing the unusual fervor, maintained their professional composure, focusing on their game plan, attempting to insulate themselves from the external noise. Yet, the air itself seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, a silent battle of wills already underway. The raw, palpable anticipation was not confined to the Azteca Stadium. It vibrated through every street in Buenos Aires, every pub in London, every corner of the globe where the echoes of the Falklands War still resonated. As the day of the match dawned, the weight of history pressed down, heavy and undeniable. Maradona, the boy from the shantytown, now stood on the precipice of legend, his every move scrutinized, his every breath carrying the hopes of millions. He was the vessel through which a nation's scarred soul sought expression, a canvas upon which the unresolved emotions of a war would be painted. The world waited, breath held, for the unfolding drama, for the moment when a football match would transcend its boundaries and become something far more profound, something truly unforgettable. The roar of the Azteca Stadium was a physical entity, a seismic wave that crashed over the pitch as the referee's whistle pierced the electric atmosphere, signaling the kickoff. From the very first touch, the match was an explosion of raw energy, a gladiatorial contest played out on a verdant stage under the intense Mexican sun. Both teams surged forward, a whirlwind of motion and intent, each player a microcosm of their nation's collective will. The tactical battles were immediate, midfielders clashing with brutal efficiency, defenders scrambling to close down attacking runs, and forwards probing for any chink in the opposing armor. It was high intensity from the outset, a furious dance of skill and aggression. Every tackle cheered, every pass applauded, every interception met with a collective gasp. For the first half, neither side managed to break the deadlock. The English team, disciplined and organized, absorbed pressure and launched swift counterattacks, their focus unwavering. The Argentinian team, spurred on by the indomitable spirit of Diego Maradona, pressed relentlessly, their intricate passing patterns weaving through the English defense, but without the final, decisive touch. The tension was palpable, a thick, almost suffocating blanket draped over the stadium. Every fan, every commentator, every player understood that this was not merely a game of football. It was a psychological warfare, a test of wills, a continuation of a narrative far older and deeper than the 90 minutes allotted. Then, just 6 minutes into the second half, the world held its breath. The moment arrived with a sudden, almost chaotic flurry of activity in the English penalty box. Maradona, ever the orchestrator, received the ball near the halfway line, his eyes already scanning the field, his mind processing possibilities at an impossible speed. He unleashed a pass towards his teammate, Jorge Valdano, but the ball was deflected, looping high into the air, a tantalizing target for anyone brave enough to challenge for it. English defender Steve Hodge, attempting to clear the danger, mishit his kick, sending the ball soaring even higher, directly into the path of the onrushing Maradona. It was a fraction of a second, a blink-and-you-miss-it phenomenon. Maradona, a man of average height, found himself facing the towering English goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, a formidable presence with an imposing reach. As the ball descended, Maradona leapt, his body contorting, his arm, almost imperceptibly, rising with him. Shilton, convinced he had the advantage, punched at the ball, but it was already too late. Maradona's hand, not his head, made contact. The ball, with a subtle but undeniable deflection, sailed past Shilton and into the back of the net. A deafening roar erupted, but it was quickly followed by a chorus of whistles and furious protests from the English players. Shilton, his face a mask of disbelief and outrage, immediately turned to the referee, his arms flailing, demanding justice. Gary Lineker, Terry Butcher, and the rest of the English squad converged on the match official, their pleas fervent, their accusations clear. They had seen it. They knew. It was a handball, a blatant act of cheating. The Argentinian players, however, were already mobbing Maradona, their celebrations ecstatic, their faces alight with a mix of joy and perhaps a hint of nervous apprehension. Maradona, ever the showman, ran towards the corner flag, pumping his fists, his smile wide, feigning complete innocence. The referee, Ali bin Nasser from Tunisia, caught in the maelstrom of conflicting emotions and perspectives, had a decision to make. His eyes, perhaps obscured by the mass of players, had not caught the crucial detail. His linesman, further down the pitch, also failed to spot the illegal contact. In the chaotic aftermath, with the roar of the crowd and the sheer speed of the incident, the call was made. The goal stood. For England, it was an injustice of monumental proportions, a betrayal of the very spirit of the game. Their manager, his face etched with frustration, could only watch in disbelief as the Argentinians celebrated. For Argentina, it was a moment of illicit joy, a stroke of fortune, perhaps even a divine intervention. Maradona, in his post-match comments, famously attributed the goal to "a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God," a phrase that would forever be etched into football folklore. The moral ambiguity of the act was immediate and profound. Was it cheating, a cynical manipulation of the rules? Or was it a moment of inspired cunning, a testament to Maradona's boundless resourcefulness, a form of sacred trickery in a contest that felt more like war than sport? The crowd in the stadium, a sea of blue and white mixed with pockets of red and white, reacted with a visceral intensity. Argentinian fans, Their initial surprise, quickly morphing into unadulterated euphoria, screamed with delight, their cheers echoing through the vast arena. English supporters, their faces contorted in anger and despair, hurled insults, their sense of fair play deeply offended. The air crackled with the raw emotion of a nation feeling wronged, and a nation feeling, perhaps, a peculiar sense of vindication. This controversial goal, born of deception and sanctioned by human error, immediately cast a long shadow over the match. It was a pivotal moment, a turning point that would define not just the game, but its enduring legacy. The question lingered, heavy in the air. How would this audacious act of sacred trickery shape the remainder of this high-stakes encounter? The game had taken an unexpected, morally complex turn, and the world watched, mesmerized, to see what would unfold next. The stage was set for a drama that transcended mere sport, a testament to the unpredictable nature of human endeavor and the profound emotions that bind nations. The incandescent fury of the English team after the Hand of God goal was a palpable force, a raw, unbridled frustration that threatened to consume them. Peter Shilton, the English goalkeeper, still raged at the injustice, his protests fading into the general din of the stadium as the Argentinians continued their jubilant, albeit questionable, celebration. The other English players, their faces flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief, struggled to regain their composure. The psychological blow was immense. To concede a goal through what they perceived as blatant cheating was an insult, a degradation of the game they held so dear. Their resolve, however, was not broken. There was a steely glint in their eyes, a determination to fight back, to reclaim honor from the jaws of this unexpected ignominy. They had absorbed the first blow, a controversial strike that would forever be debated, but the match was far from over. Yet, even as the English players wrestled with their outrage, a new chapter of sheer, unadulterated brilliance was about to unfold. Just 4 minutes after the controversial opener, with the clock showing 55 minutes, Diego Maradona, the architect of the sacred trickery, would deliver a second blow, one so breathtakingly audacious, so sublimely skillful, that it would silence all protests and convert even the most hardened skeptics into awestruck spectators. This was not a moment born of deception, but of pure, unadulterated genius, a testament to the boundless talent that resided within the small, stocky frame of the Argentinian captain. The ball, once again, found its way to Maradona, deep within his own half, just inside the center circle. There seemed to be little immediate danger, the English defense still regrouping, perhaps still reeling from the earlier incident. But Maradona, his senses sharpened, his vision unparalleled, saw an opening where others saw only a congested midfield. He received the pass with a casual flick, a deceptive move that belied the explosive power he was about to unleash. His first touch was immaculate, cushioning the ball perfectly, setting the stage for what was to come. Then he began his run. It was a run that would carve itself into the annals of football history. A serpentine dance through a bewildered English defense. With the ball seemingly glued to his left foot, Maradona embarked on a solo odyssey, a journey of unparalleled grace and devastating effectiveness. He accelerated, a blur of blue and white, leaving one English midfielder, Peter Reid, flailing in his wake with a sudden burst of pace. Another, Terry Butcher, lunged desperately, but Maradona, with an almost imperceptible shimmy of his hips, ghosted past him, leaving the towering defender grasping at thin air. The commentator's voice, initially calm, began to rise in pitch, a sense of mounting disbelief coloring his words. Maradona was not just dribbling, he was weaving, pirouetting, accelerating and decelerating with a control that defied logic. He ran at the heart of the English defense, a charging bull with the delicate touch of a surgeon. Glenn Hoddle, another English midfielder, tried to intercept, but Maradona, with a flick of his ankle, sent the ball rolling just beyond his reach, a phantom presence that seemed to anticipate every challenge. He entered the English penalty area, a fortress that had seemed impenetrable moments before, now a playground for his singular talent. Terry Fenwick, the last line of defense before the goalkeeper, stepped up to challenge, attempting to block Maradona's path. But the Argentinian, with a feint to his right and a devastating cut back to his left Fenwick sprawling on the turf, a victim of his own eagerness. The goal, now, was wide open, only the formidable Peter Shilton standing between Maradona and eternal glory. Shilton, a giant of a man, rushed out, attempting to narrow the angle, to intimidate, to impose his physical presence. It was a desperate last-ditch effort, but Maradona, with the coolness of a seasoned assassin, waited until the very last second. He feigned a shot, drawing Shilton one way. Then, with a delicate touch of his left foot, he pushed the ball around the onrushing goalkeeper. The ball rolled agonizingly slowly towards the empty net, a silent testament to the brilliance that had just unfolded. Shilton, defeated, could only watch as the ball nestled gently into the back of the net. The stadium erupted, this time with a roar that transcended nationality, a universal gasp of awe and admiration. It was a goal so magnificent, so utterly improbable, that even the English players, moments before consumed by anger, found themselves momentarily stunned into a grudging respect. The commentator, his voice now a crescendo of pure emotion, declared it the greatest goal in the history of the World Cup, a phrase that would echo through time, forever attached to this moment of unparalleled genius. The stark contrast between the two goals was breathtaking. One, born of cunning and deception, a controversial act that would forever be debated. The other, a masterpiece of individual skill, a dazzling display of athletic prowess and artistic vision. Maradona had, in the space of 4 minutes, presented the world with two sides of his complex genius. The street fighter, willing to bend the rules to gain an advantage, and the balletic virtuoso, capable of creating beauty from chaos. The emotional shift in the stadium was palpable. The anger and frustration that had simmered after the first goal were now replaced by a sense of wonder, a collective understanding that they had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Even the English fans, their hearts heavy with the weight of concession, could not deny the sheer brilliance of what they had seen. It was a goal that transcended the rivalry, transcended the controversy, and stood alone as a monument to the beautiful game. The Argentinian bench exploded in unadulterated ecstasy, players and coaches leaping into each other's arms, their faces alight with an almost religious fervor. Maradona, having completed his epic journey, stood for a moment, arms aloft, basking in the adoration of the crowd, his teammates mobbing him, their joy unconfined. This was not just a goal. It was a statement, a declaration of dominance, a moment where a single player elevated the sport to an art form. Maradona had transcended mere sport. He was an artist, painting a masterpiece on the green canvas of the pitch, and a warrior, battling not just opponents, but history itself. He had taken the weight of a nation's scarred soul, the burden of past injustices, and transformed it into a moment of pure, unadulterated magic. The game, already charged with historical significance, had now been stamped with the indelible mark of a legend. A moment that would define not just this match, but the very essence of Diego Maradona. The world watched, mesmerized, as the legend solidified before their very eyes. The stadium's roar, still echoing from Maradona's second miraculous goal, slowly began to shift. For the English team, the initial shock gave way to a grim determination. 2 goals down, one of them a blatant act of deception, the other an undeniable stroke of genius, they faced a monumental task. Yet, the pride of a seasoned, formidable opponent would not allow for surrender. Their faces, etched with a mixture of frustration and resolve, showed a team unwilling to capitulate without a fight. The English players, despite the emotional toll, began to press, their attacks fueled by a desperate urgency. Peter Shilton, the English goalkeeper, though beaten twice, remained a formidable presence, his saves preventing what could have been an even wider deficit. He parried a fierce shot from Jorge Burruchaga, tipping it over the bar with a full-stretch dive, a testament to his unwavering commitment. Later, he bravely dived at the feet of Jorge Valdano, smothering a dangerous through ball that threatened to extend Argentina's lead. Each save, each interception, was a small victory, a refusal to be completely overwhelmed. The midfield battle intensified, the English players, particularly Glenn Hoddle and Peter Reid, fighting for every inch of turf. They harried the Argentinians, attempting to disrupt their rhythm, to regain some semblance of control over the game. Their passes grew sharper, their runs more incisive. John Barnes, brought on as a substitute, injected a fresh burst of energy into their attack, his dazzling runs down the flank creating pockets of space and moments of genuine threat. He delivered a pinpoint cross that found Gary Lineker, whose powerful header forced another superb save from the Argentinian goalkeeper, Nery Pompidou. The ball, seemingly destined for the net, was clawed away at the last moment, a collective sigh of despair emanating from the English bench. The emotional toll on the English players was heavy, a visible weight on their shoulders. They grappled not only with the scoreboard, but with the profound sense of injustice delivered by the hand of God. How could they reconcile the blatant foul that had gone unpunished with the unparalleled brilliance that followed? It was a psychological burden, a constant whisper of unfairness that gnawed at their resolve. Yet they pushed on, their pride demanding nothing less. Each sprint, each tackle, each shot was an act of defiance against a fate that seemed increasingly sealed. The English manager, Bobby Robson, paced anxiously in his technical area, his brow furrowed in concentration. He barked instructions, gesticulated wildly, constantly adjusting his tactical approach. He had brought on attacking players, sacrificing defensive solidity for a chance at redemption. The team shifted formations, trying to unlock the Argentinian defense, which, invigorated by Maradona's magic, seemed to grow stronger with every passing minute. Robson's desperation was palpable, a visible reflection of the immense pressure he felt, not just for the game, but for his nation. He understood the symbolic weight of this match, the deep-seated emotions it stirred back home. Despite their valiant efforts, a growing sense of inevitability began to pervade the English side. Time was slipping away, each tick of the clock amplifying their predicament. Attacks that started with promise often dissolved into frustration. Passes went astray, and shots, when they came, lacked the conviction needed to beat Pompidou. The Argentinian team, particularly their captain, Diego Maradona, seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to anticipate their moves, to snuff out danger before it fully materialized. Maradona himself, though no longer the primary attacking force, dropped deeper, orchestrating play, his vision and tactical awareness denying England the space they desperately sought. Moments of despair became more frequent. A misplaced pass leading to an Argentinian counterattack, a foul given against them in a crucial area, a promising run ending in a tackle. The frustration mounted, occasionally boiling over into visible exasperation. Terry Butcher, the stoic defender, pounded the ground after a failed clearance. Glenn Hoddle threw his hands up in dismay after a promising through ball was intercepted. These were proud men, accustomed to victory, now facing the bitter taste of a defeat that felt both unfair and overwhelming. The clock ticked down relentlessly, each minute a hammer blow to English hopes. The Mexican sun, once a bright backdrop, now seemed to cast long, mocking shadows across the pitch. The crowd, largely neutral but swaying heavily towards the South American flair, began to celebrate prematurely, their chants growing louder, their confidence unshakable. The English players, heads bowed, continued to run, to fight, but the energy that had propelled them earlier began to wane. The psychological burden of seeing their national pride challenged on multiple fronts, the controversy of the first goal, the undeniable genius of the second, and the looming specter of defeat, was simply too immense. They had given their all, but it was clear, with agonizing certainty, that it would not be enough. The final whistle, when it came, would not just mark the end of a game, but the crushing blow of a defeat laden with far more than just sporting disappointment. They had fought, they had resisted, but the magic and the trickery of Maradona, coupled with the weight of history, had proven too much. The piercing shriek of the final whistle sliced through the charged atmosphere of the Azteca Stadium, a sound that simultaneously unleashed an explosion of joy and a wave of profound despair. For Argentina, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated ecstasy, a cathartic release of decades of pent-up emotion. Players collapsed onto each other, tears streaming down their faces, not just from the physical exertion, but from the sheer, overwhelming relief and elation. Diego Maradona, the architect of their triumph, was immediately engulfed by his teammates, a whirlwind of embraces and triumphant shouts. His face, usually a mask of fierce concentration, was now split by a wide, toothy grin, his eyes shining with an almost divine light. The burden he had carried, the weight of a nation's hopes and scarred soul, had been lifted, replaced by an intoxicating sense of victory. The Argentinian bench erupted, coaches and substitutes pouring onto the pitch, joining the celebratory pile. Flags were waved, songs were sung, and the air vibrated with a joyous noise that seemed to shake the very foundations of the stadium. It was more than just a football match won. It was a symbolic victory, a profound moment of national redemption. For a country still reeling from the devastating defeat in the Falklands War just 4 years prior, this win against England felt like a balm, a powerful affirmation of their spirit and resilience. The unspoken connection between the football pitch and the battlefields of the South Atlantic was palpable, woven into every cheer, every embrace. Maradona, hoisted onto the shoulders of his jubilant teammates, became the embodiment of this defiance and triumph. He was not just a player, he was a warrior, leading his people to a victory that transcended sport. His 2 goals, one born of cunning and the other of sheer, unadulterated genius, had etched his name into the annals of history, not merely as a footballer, but as a national hero. He had delivered revenge, not with bullets and bombs, but with a ball at his feet, proving that even in defeat, the spirit of a nation could rise, fierce and unyielding. The narrative of sports as a proxy for war found its most potent expression on that sun-drenched afternoon in Mexico City. For the Argentinian people watching back home, glued to their television sets or radios, the final whistle brought an outpouring of emotion that bordered on spiritual. Streets that had been eerily quiet during the match erupted into a cacophony of horns, shouts, and celebratory fireworks. Strangers embraced in the streets, tears mingling with laughter. Old wounds, though not entirely healed, felt less raw, less painful. This victory, against the very nation that had inflicted such pain, provided a form of catharsis, a collective exhalation that had been held for too long. It was a moment of unity, a shared experience of triumph that momentarily overshadowed the economic hardship and political instability that plagued their nation. The complex feelings surrounding whether a sporting triumph could truly atone for the loss of lives and land in the Falklands War were undoubtedly present, yet momentarily pushed aside by the overwhelming joy. In the immediate aftermath, the answer seemed to be a resounding yes. This was not about replacing what was lost, but about reclaiming a sense of pride, of proving their strength and spirit to the world and to themselves. It was a testament to the human need for heroes and narratives of triumph, especially in times of adversity. Maradona had gifted them that narrative, a story of an underdog rising, of cunning outsmarting power, of genius overcoming obstacles. National pride swelled, a powerful, almost tangible force. The victory was immediately absorbed into the national identity, becoming a part of the collective memory, a touchstone for future generations. It was a moment when Argentina, battered but unbowed, stood tall on the world stage, their flag flying high, their anthem sung with renewed fervor. The celebration was not just for the World Cup quarter-final win. It was for a nation reasserting itself, finding its voice through the extraordinary feats of one man and his team. As the English players slowly made their way off the pitch, their heads bowed, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and bitter disappointment. The contrast could not have been starker. They had fought valiantly, but they had been defeated, not just by 2 goals, but by a force that carried the weight of history and the raw emotion of an entire nation. The defeat was crushing, laden with far more than just sporting disappointment. They had come to Mexico to win a football match, unaware of the profound, almost sacred significance this encounter held for their opponents. The images of Maradona, radiant and triumphant, surrounded by his adoring teammates, would forever be etched into the memory of both nations. For Argentina, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a validation of their spirit and their defiance. For England, it was a bitter pill, a reminder of a controversy and a genius that had combined to deny them progression in the tournament. This was more than a game. It was a nation's emotional reckoning, played out on the grandest stage, with one man at its heart, forever intertwining the destinies of 2 nations through the beautiful, brutal game of football. The echoes of war, though distant, had found their way onto the pitch, and in victory, Argentina had found a fleeting but deeply powerful form of redemption. The immediate aftermath of the final whistle, the jubilant Argentinian celebrations, and the somber English retreat from the pitch quickly transitioned into a global conversation that would echo for decades. Journalists, pundits, and fans alike grappled with the enormity of what had just transpired in the Azteca Stadium. Post-match reflections from players, coaches, and commentators, both Argentinian and English, began almost instantly, each offering a piece of the puzzle, a perspective on a game that defied simple analysis. For the Argentinians, there was an overwhelming sense of vindication. Maradona, still basking in the glow of victory, famously declared that the first goal was scored a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. This audacious admission, rather than diminishing his feat in the eyes of his countrymen, only solidified his mythic status. It was a testament to his cunning, his willingness to bend the rules, to outsmart a system that had, in their view, often worked against them. His teammates, while perhaps privately acknowledging the controversy, publicly celebrated their captain's genius. They spoke of his leadership, his relentless drive, and his almost supernatural ability to conjure victory from thin air. The Argentinian coach, Carlos Bilardo, a man renowned for his tactical acumen and pragmatic approach, simply smiled, allowing the results to speak for themselves. He knew the significance of this win went far beyond the scoreboard. On the English side, the reflections were tinged with a bitter blend of frustration and grudging respect. English goalkeeper Peter Shilton, who had been directly thwarted by Maradona's hand, was, understandably, furious. He felt cheated, robbed of a fair contest. His teammates echoed his sentiment, lamenting the referee's failure to spot the blatant handball. Yet, even amidst their anger, there was an undeniable awe for Maradona's second goal. Gary Lineker, who scored England's lone goal in the match, would later describe it as the greatest goal ever scored. Even the English manager, Bobby Robson, a man of immense integrity, could only shake his head in disbelief and admiration at the sheer brilliance of that solo effort. The English press, initially outraged by the hand of God, found themselves in the peculiar position of having to acknowledge the undeniable artistry of the goal of the century. The iconic images from the game, Maradona leaping, the ball nestling in the net, his exhilarating sprint, the bewildered English defenders, were immediately seared into the collective memory of football fans worldwide. The lasting impact of both the hand of God and the goal of the century on football history was profound and multi-layered. The first goal sparked an unending debate about sportsmanship, morality, and the nature of victory. Was it cheating, or was it a clever, albeit illicit, manipulation of the rules? A sacred trickery, as some Argentinians would come to call it. This controversy ensured the match would never be forgotten, forever linking Maradona's name not just with unparalleled skill, but with a moment of audacious deception. It highlighted the fine line between genius and devilry, a line Maradona seemed to dance upon with effortless grace. Conversely, the goal of the century transcended all ethical debates. It was pure, unadulterated footballing artistry, a masterclass in dribbling, balance, and audacious finishing. It was a goal that inspired millions, demonstrating the peak of individual brilliance attainable in the sport. It became a benchmark against which all other great goals would be measured, a timeless piece of athletic poetry. Together, these two goals, scored within minutes of each other by the same player, ensured Maradona's elevation to mythical status. He became a flawed hero, a complex figure embodying both the sublime and the controversial aspects of the beautiful game. This match, more than any other, shaped Maradona's career and legend. It was his definitive statement to the world, a declaration of his singular talent and his unyielding will to win. It propelled Argentina towards their second World Cup title, with Maradona as the undisputed star, further cementing his place in the pantheon of sporting greats. The enduring rivalry between Argentina and England in football, already simmering due to historical tensions, intensified dramatically after this game. Every subsequent encounter between the two nations on the pitch would carry the weight of 1986, a silent acknowledgement of the events that unfolded in Mexico City. The cultural significance of the game extended far beyond sport, becoming a historical marker, a point of reference in discussions about national identity, pride, and even geopolitics. It entered the lexicon, with "hand of God" becoming a widely recognized phrase, synonymous with controversial yet effective actions. The dark, epic, and emotional tones surrounding the match continued to reverberate through time, shaping perceptions of Maradona, of Argentina, and of the complex relationship between sport and national sentiment. How would history ultimately judge Maradona and this legendary match? The question remains open, perpetually debated. For many, he is the greatest footballer of all time, a working-class hero who defied expectations and brought joy to millions. For others, the hand of God remains an indelible stain, a moment of unsportsmanlike conduct that tarnished his legacy. Yet it is precisely this duality, this blend of genius and controversy, that makes Maradona and the 1986 quarter-final so compelling. It was a game that laid bare the raw, unfiltered emotions of a world still grappling with the echoes of war, played out by a man who was both a god and a trickster, leaving an indelible mark on the soul of football. The narrative of that day was not just about winning or losing, it was about the complex interplay of history, talent, and the human spirit under immense pressure. The long-term legacy of the Falklands War, or Malvinas War, as it was known in Argentina, continued to cast a profound shadow over Anglo-Argentine relations, a geopolitical scar that transcended mere diplomatic tensions. Decades after the conflict, the raw emotions, the sense of national grievance, and the unwavering claims of sovereignty remained potent forces, shaping perceptions and interactions between the two nations. The 1986 World Cup match, rather than being an isolated sporting event, became inextricably woven into this complex tapestry of historical animosity and unresolved pain. It served as a vivid, albeit symbolic, proxy battle, a moment where the collective trauma of war found an outlet on the global stage of sport. The power of sport, as demonstrated so acutely on that sun-drenched afternoon in Mexico City, proved to be a double-edged sword. It possessed an extraordinary capacity to both unite and divide, to heal wounds and, paradoxically, to reopen old ones. For Argentina, the victory, spearheaded by Maradona, offered a profound sense of unity and catharsis. It was a balm for a bruised national psyche, a moment of collective triumph that momentarily eclipsed the sorrow and humiliation of military defeat. Yet, for England, it was a bitter pill, a perceived injustice that reinforced a sense of moral superiority even in defeat, fueling a continued rivalry that would play out on football pitches for years to come. The game became a testament to how sport could encapsulate, reflect, and even inflame deep-seated national sentiments, far beyond the confines of athletic competition. Maradona's personal journey after the 1986 World Cup was a tumultuous saga, a dramatic narrative filled with both unparalleled triumphs and profound struggles. He led Napoli to 2 Serie A titles, transforming a provincial club into Italian champions, further cementing his status as a footballing deity. His genius on the pitch remained undeniable, a mesmerizing blend of skill, vision, and sheer willpower. However, off the field, his life became increasingly fraught with personal demons. Addiction, health issues, and controversies followed him, casting a dark cloud over his otherwise brilliant career. The immense pressure of being a national hero, a symbol of hope and defiance, proved to be an overwhelming burden. His life became a public spectacle, a cautionary tale of the intoxicating highs and devastating lows that accompany global fame. He remained, until his dying day, the complex figure forged in the fires of that 1986 match, forever embodying both brilliance and controversy. The enduring image of Maradona, therefore, is one of a complex and multifaceted individual. He was a working-class hero who rose from the slums of Buenos Aires to conquer the world. A defiant figure who challenged authority and embraced his role as the people's champion. Yet, he was also a flawed man, susceptible to temptation and burdened by the weight of expectation. The Hand of God goal, in particular, solidified his image as a figure of sacred trickery. This concept, often debated, asks a fundamental question: how far is too far in the pursuit of victory and national pride? For many Argentinians, it was a justifiable act, a clever subversion of rules against an adversary perceived as having acted unfairly in a larger conflict. It was a small act of defiance, a moment where the underdog outsmarted the powerful. For others, it was simply cheating, a stain on the beautiful game. This duality, this moral ambiguity, is precisely what makes Maradona and his legacy so endlessly fascinating. He was a trickster god, a mischievous deity who could conjure magic with his feet and bend reality to his will, even if it meant a touch of divine deception. The emotional resonance of that single game, the 1986 quarterfinal, continued to reverberate through generations, transcending geographical boundaries and cultural differences. For those who witnessed it live, it remains an indelible memory, a story recounted with vivid detail and fervent emotion. For subsequent generations, it is a legend passed down, a cornerstone of football folklore, taught and retold through grainy footage and passionate testimonials. It became more than just a football match. It became a historical event, a cultural touchstone, a narrative that encapsulated the complexities of national identity, pride, and the enduring human desire for redemption. A closing reflection on the nature of revenge, redemption, and the human spirit in competition reveals the profound depths of the 1986 encounter. Was it revenge for the Malvinas? For many Argentinians, it undoubtedly felt that way. A symbolic victory that offered a taste of justice. Was it redemption? For a nation reeling from military defeat and economic hardship, Maradona's triumph offered a powerful narrative of resilience and resurgence. The human spirit, in its competitive fervor, found an extraordinary channel for expression, transforming a game of football into an epic drama of national significance. It was a stark reminder that sport, at its most intense, can mirror the grand narratives of human history, reflecting our deepest desires, our most profound grievances, and our most exhilarating triumphs. The match between Argentina and England in 1986, therefore, stands as a timeless story of human drama, forever etched in memory. It is a testament to the raw, unfiltered emotions that bind sport, war, and national identity into an inseparable whole. It showed how a single individual, armed with extraordinary talent and an unshakable will, could carry the hopes and dreams of an entire nation, transforming a game into a canvas for history. Maradona, the flawed genius, the trickster god, remains the central figure in this enduring legend. His legacy, a complex tapestry of brilliance and controversy. The Hand of God and the goal of the century are not just moments in football. They are enduring symbols of a nation's spirit, a player's audacity, and the profound, often challenging intersection of sport and geopolitics. The echoes of that day in Azteca Stadium continue to resonate, a powerful reminder of how a game can become so much more than just a game.